Welcome, class. This week we are going to work on characterization, and this particular PowerPoint shows us 8 different ways of looking at a character in a story. So I thought that this would be good because you really have to work on assignment 4A to really develop 3 characters. So let's pay attention to the specific qualities that characterization has. The first one is the obvious one, and that's physical description, and that's the easiest way of describing anybody. You talk about anything physical: their height, their skin color, the type of skin they have, hair, eye color, short, tall, skinny, fat, do they wear glasses, how he or she walks or stands, anything physical about the character. And physical description is really important because that really determines what type of character you have. So, here's a perfect example of physical description. The soldier wore his dress blues for the event: shined black shoes that shone in the light, perfectly pressed pants, and a jacket displaying his rank. He was a tall man that stood out in the room. Almost 6'7" he towered over most of his peers. Just 3 or 4 sentences there, and you could honestly see, even if that picture wasn't in the background, you could honestly see in your mind's eye that he was tall, really tall. He had his uniform on, and the sentences really explain how the uniform looks. So there's no way that you could not describe it. Okay, so the next quality is name analysis. Now, analyzing a character's name is looking more closely to its meaning, if there is one, in describing it. So not all characters have a name that's significant to the story, but it's always cool to actually pick a character name that means something and that can contribute to the storyline. For instance, I don't know if you've seen this movie because it was awful. It started out as a novel. That was then, this is now. S.E. Hinton used one of the name of the characters as Eminem. And of course Eminem gets his nickname, surprise surprise, he's always eating the popular candy. He's always eating M&Ms. And the other characters in the story have called him this so much that they even forgot, we don't have no idea what his real name is. And this reminds me of, in my family, well, I should say in my aunt's side of the family, her brother was named Bubby, and I had no clue what his real name was until the day that we got his wedding invitation, and I had no clue. His name was Theodore all those years, but his nickname was Theodore, and that's what he went by. All right. Excuse me, his nickname was Bubby, and that's what he went by. So if you were to write a name analysis for the character Eminem in S.E.'s novels, you would explain in your description how the name has significance to the character. Okay, now the next element when you're developing a character is their attitude, their appearance. And this is your opportunity to describe how the character feels about what's happening to him or her in a story, how they should act, and if you're going to put them in a similar situation, you're in charge. You could make them nice, you could make them sweet, you could make them mean, you can do anything you want because you're in charge of this. So here's an example. This is a little selection from a story by Guy de Maupassant. It's called The Necklace, and this is the line: "She suffered constantly, feeling that all the attributes of a gracious life, every luxury, should rightly have been hers." So we get the message here. She's always suffering because she feels she should have more, and she has nothing. So we know that this kind of a character now, this character kind of feels resentment, and she feels like she deserves a better life. And this type of a character you really could have fun with in a story because you could make her this mean-spirited person that does things to other people to get what she wants. Okay, so now the next is dialogue. Now, dialogue is the way a character talks. And you can include dialogue as their choice of words and syntax. It also includes the tone and the diction of the character when he or she speaks. And dialogue and syntax really have to do with when that person speaks, is the character serious? Is the character sarcastic, obnoxious, shy, ignorant? All of these qualities certainly can be conveyed through what the characters are saying. So here's a perfect example. Now remember, dialogue, it's not done in italics. Dialogue is done within quotation marks. So here it starts, so you put the quotation mark here, and it ends over here. And the quotation mark goes here. The period goes here to end the dialogue quote, and the quotation mark goes here to signify that it's the end. So, come, we will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy as I once was. You are a man to be missed. For me, it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. And this is a line from The Cask of Amontillado, written by Edgar Allan Poe. And this is when, I forget his name, he's bringing the rich man into the caverns. Okay, so there it is. The narrator showing concern. Fortunato, that's the name I could not remember. So we know that the narrator wants revenge on Fortunato, but when we read the dialogue, we realize that the narrator really wants revenge, and what he's saying is, yeah, maybe you should go back. You might get sick, but you know there is something special at the end here, and we know we can infer that the character is definitely being sarcastic. Okay, the next element is the thoughts of a character. We only know about the thoughts of a character if you, as the writer, provide them for us. The reader cannot get inside the head of your characters unless you allow us in there. So the thoughts that the character has, what the character is actually thinking, you need to provide that information for us. So here's an example. In the story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber, the reader is very much a part of Walter Mitty's thoughts, because there's a lot in that story that happens in Walter Mitty's mind. And the descriptions in the story, and the reader experiences the daydreams of the character, because that's what Walter Mitty did in that story. He had a lot of daydreams. But we really can't comment or analyze on any of them because we're not inside his head. So the only thing we have to go on is what you are providing for us. So reactions of others. This is another technique that is used. You can, when you're analyzing the reaction of others, you can look closely at how other characters in the story react or how they treat the character that you're characterizing. It could be a verbal response, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be a rolling of eyes, it could be like a huh, you know, or just turning away from the person, from the character. So this is the one element that when it's used, you could show your reader if the character is liked, disliked, popular, honest, trustworthy, etc. So here's an example. In the story, the way other characters interact with each other can reveal a lot about the characters. In the story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber, Walter's wife treats him with an almost boss-like motherly attitude rather than a loving wife. And so what do we know by that? If we're reading it, the reader then realizes that his wife really feels that he's incompetent and he can't do anything by himself. Okay, the next is action or incident, and it's certainly a character can be analyzed by looking at an action or an incident and how it affected them and how they reacted to it. And you can also determine what kind of a character you have as a reader, depending on what the character did when confronted with the situation. And certainly you're looking at what the character did with this particular situation, but certainly in many cases the character is reacting because of things that happened earlier, either in the story, in the book, or in their lives. So the action or the incident determines the way the character develops as the story goes. Because if we don't have actions or incidents or situations in a story, we really don't have very much. Especially a short story. I'm not talking about a nonfiction piece. That's entirely different. I'm talking about simply an actual story that you're putting together. You're telling the reader about something. So here's an example. In the novel The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, we learned that the narrator lost his parents in a car accident when he was young. This accident happened before the story began, and it's affecting the development of the main character. And if you were actually doing write a character description, you could explain how the incident affects the character's development and give examples of its effects. Okay, now the last element is, of course, the physical or the emotional setting. The setting of a story is really important in many cases. It affects the character's development as well as the plot. So the physical setting, where it's taking place, it depends on, it will definitely influence the way the character develops. Now the emotional setting, that's an entirely different thing, because your characters have to deal with emotions as they go through the story. So I hope this helps. I've given you 8 methods of characterization. Use these to help you as you develop your characters. You don't want a flat description, a flat character. You want a round character. And by round, I mean that we know everything about that character. So, the end. This was created, by the way, by a student of mine a while ago by the name of Trish Turner. I always like to give credit where credit is due. So let's talk a little bit about the assignment this week. So in 4A, you are developing 3 characters, and I've provided you with 6 questions. So for each character, write number 1 on your page, and then a name of that character, and then underneath that, answer the 6 questions. Develop this. I don't want like 1 or 2 words. I want you to develop. Answer the questions. Spell it out. And do that 3 times. So for each of your 3 characters, I want you to really delve into, I want to know everything about these 3 characters. And then in 4B, you're going to take those 3 characters and you're going to put them in a situation or an event, and you want all 3 of them to interact. But remember, as they're interacting, you have to make them interact according to what you developed for them in assignment 4A. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can't, 4A and 4B are not 2 separate assignments. They actually are 2 assignments that mean to be tied together. So keep that in mind. 250 words. Please make sure that you're double spacing and that you're indenting for new paragraphs. Make sure that you follow APA. Even though this is a creative writing class, that doesn't mean you should abandon APA. And use 12-point Times New Roman. Other than that, have a great week. Have fun with this assignment.